Derek, we live? All right, we are here with Justun from Rock and Forever Roll Tattoo, lead singer on Middle Finger, bass guitar in the Havok, and many other things. We're so excited to have him today. Welcome. So let's start it out with this. How did you get introduced to music? Obviously, it's a huge part of your life. It's part of your work at the tattoo shop based off the name. It's pretty much probably part of every facet of your life. How did it all start? How old were you? Where were you? Where were you living? What were the bands that you started with?
So I grew up in Johnstown, Pennsylvania. Well, a little town outskirts, Monday's Corner. But rock and roll was a huge part of my parents' life, just listening to it. I remember, Saturday nights, I remember being at my parents' house and they had a big old stereo system. I remember just like listening to Sabbath, Zeppelin, areas of that stuff. And I just took heart to it. And then as time went on, I have a sister. She's 7 years older than me. Her name's Stacy. She's awesome. And she got me into metal, a lot of Metallica, and then even like early old like UK82 kind of punk bands, Exploited, stuff like that. So it just took heart. It was just there.
Awesome. It was just something that was always meant to be. Yeah. Now, another thing that anyone who's ever seen your social medias will know about your life. Rock and roll's huge, but also another major part of your life is definitely being a father. What's it like being a punk rock and roll dad?
It's probably one of the best things ever. The funny thing is my kid, she's 15 now.
All right.
She is my heart and joy. Cracks me up because she wants nothing to do with punk rock. She grew up around it, and to her it's boring. It's hilarious.
She's hearing so much.
But her attitude is so fucking punk rock. It's one of the most beautiful things ever. And then, like, as a parent, our parents always think, like, at times, like, let's say what they think is best for us in these different perspectives. So I have these things of life that I kind of carry on with me or whatever, but also at the same time, being a parent, it's like my kid keeps me in check with that. Because I could say, like, hey, give this music a chance, do this. And then there could be something she likes where naturally I'm like, I don't know how I feel about that as a parent. But then I go and the experience like always blows my mind. But yeah, it's one of the best things ever being a parent.
Awesome.
Wouldn't change it for anything.
So in that same lane, we'd like to give out gifts. So I'm going to grab yours here real quick. So we actually made this piece of, I guess you could call it artwork, definitely very punk rock. We wanted to give you that.
Nice. Amazing. Thank you so much.
There you go.
Yeah,
for the punk rock dad.
Yep. That's great. It's funny because in my house I have this sign that just says rock and roll and stuff, and there's all these pictures with my daughter and I, so like that will fit actually perfect.
Nice, yeah. So obviously you've been in the Pittsburgh scene for a long time. When would you say you first entered the Pittsburgh music scene?
Probably in the as far as entering it, mid-90s. I still lived back home, but I had friends that were older, and then they got me introduced more to the street punk scene and like other underground bands, because back home, like I was aware of like some of the older punk rock, but more of like that mainstream of Exploited. I use Exploited because I feel like that's something like a lot of people.
For sure.
But then coming into Pittsburgh, at that time, because you didn't have like everything was like back then was like zines, or you would buy record, or like whoever was on that label, maybe then you would get all their stuff, so it was like kind of like a gamble. But yeah, 90s, man, starting to come to Pittsburgh for shows.
So back then in the 90s when you first started, where would you say some of your favorite venues to go to a show at were?
To be honest, I don't even remember like specific names, because it's been like I'm 46 now.
That was a long time
this
ago.
is like 15, 16. I mean, I do remember at one point being introduced, being at a few shows, the Shit Pit, Chesterfield. It was up above, like where Laga was in Oakland. There was that. On South Craig Street, too, I remember you would... there used to be, I think it was Brave New World was there at the time, and there was a comic book store, but if you would get up to the end of that street, you make a right, blah, 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 make another left. I remember going down the road, and there was like this housing development, And there used to be a house there where some punk rockers had, and they had shows there. I remember seeing like Showcase Showdown there in the basement.
Dope.
There was somebody that was in a Vail too that had started a band. So it was cool because it was very diverse too. You know, it wasn't like, as far as like, I always enjoyed that, like traveling to the city, because there was like specifics of like what I was starting to find attachment to, but I enjoyed hearing different sounds of punk rock, or maybe hardcore even too at the time.
So subcultures, you know, whether it be punk, hardcore, metal, there's so many of them out there. Why do you think so many people are like drawn to those, and why do you think they're important for society just to have those and those to flourish?
It's timeless. Everybody needs a foundation, but the heartbeat of the underground, there's growth always to it, whether that be in numbers or the voice, but the foundation and the lyrics that these bands have can go from generation to generation, so it's relatable. I feel like a lot of times if people step out of that, it's because they have trouble understanding. It's like that balance of like society. It's like they get a job, or people could be like, oh, you're too old to be in a punk band or whatever, but you're not, you know. It's so important. Like I said, it's such a solid structure and foundation that's timeless.
For sure. Another question talking about solid structure. It was known, I remember when I was a kid going to some of your band shows, that you were a Christian and that faith was like kind of part of what you did. You weren't like out front with it, but everyone kind of knew about it. Many years later now, I want to say when I was going to those shows, it might have been 15 plus years ago. Where has your faith journey gone with Christianity? Are you still a Christian? Like, where's that all? Like, so many bands were Christian bands and they're not now. Where's kind of Justun fallen on that whole spectrum?
I mean, it's definitely the same thing, a solid structure for my life. My upbringing and my outlook has been different through my experience. So it's such an important foundation for me. The reason being, though, too, is like I said it before, experience. So like touring, I've witnessed things to me where it was just like, oh, God's real. But I'm always in a weird spot with it, not like as far as like I know who I am. I know that faith and what God has done for me through those perspectives, but it's funny when you're at that, because is what ends up happening is you hit this like collision. So technically the church doesn't want you, and then sometimes the scene doesn't want you. And that just hurts at times, because I can understand, because once again, it's how things are let's say maybe announced, talked about, or previewed, or shown in a way. And if you look at American Christianity, or even how it relates into politics, like, it really is like a scam. It's like, and I hate to be negative in any ways or whatever, but you have these fabrications. So for me, it's been more from experience and a relationship. So sometimes even where I'm at, like I said, I've had that journey where I've stepped out from these things and I've explored. But ultimately, I wish, like, sometimes even in general, on both sides, people would just ask rather than assuming, or think like, oh, he fits in with this, church or something. And unfortunately, they're wrong about that, and that's not the situation.
Yeah, people love to pigeonhole.
I've always been kind of like more of the, if you want to relate it to rock and roll, like the Johnny Cash or Elvis type thing. It's like these dudes went through these eras and they were who they were, but they're still well technically respected amongst a lot of people, but that's always been like my outlook. I'm like, hey, if whoever you are, like if you're a punk rocker, you're a punk rocker. You don't need technically all these other things. And it's funny because I've never even really like, if people ask, like said before, like, oh, you're a Christian or whatever, I could be like, yeah, because they're asking me this question, but I've never been like, hey, I'm Justun, I'm this Christian punk tattoo artist, blah, blah, blah. I'm a punk rocker, I'm a tattoo artist, I'm a dad. Like it's just these basic things of like, this is who I am,
Yeah, absolutely. I do a lot of these interviews, and I've never shared this. I run a DIY venue out of my basement. Been going to punk metal shows since I was 14, and I am a DIY venue runner. I sell antiques, and I'm a children's minister. So I can definitely relate to, like people love to like, I think it was more of a thing maybe even like a few years back where they wanted to be like, that was like a slap that they wanted to put on you. Yeah. And then you could or couldn't play certain venues because of that. I think now it's just like kind of chilling out a little bit more.
That's what I thought, and unfortunately it isn't. But I feel like sometimes it is based on the scenes,
Oh, for sure.
I know when I started playing in the Havok, We were supposed to do a couple shows, and there was a couple shows that we ended up not being able to play, even though technically we were booked and stuff. But there would be one or two specific bands that were part of like being headliners too, that were like, we will not play if that band's playing because we know there's guys in it that are Christian, which it sucks because you're like, man, I really like these bands. Like one band specifically, I got shirts, a scarf, all this different stuff where I'm like, I love these guys. You know, I have no problem. And we never even had like crazy run-ins. Even if Havok had played in the past with this band before I was in it, like I've heard good things. And I've never even heard anything bad about these bands. But unfortunately, I think it comes up to trauma of some sort. Either, somebody at church or being and I get it, but I wish that wasn't the case in punk rock when we're like, no, we're all kind of all in this together. We want to make this change. We're not sitting there trying to like, if we want anyone to be changed in any way, it's just to be like a good individual, and how can we help and build this community. So.
For sure. Yeah, that's a shitty thing to have happen for sure. I would not have guessed that would have been happening.
Yeah, we were blown away because we figured, when you're in your teens and your 20s, like the politics of that, it's a little bit more supercharged. But when you become, a grown man, a woman, and you're in these stages of life where you're like, hey, we got a family, kids, all this stuff, like there's a lot of things that we have more life mouths that we figured we could sit down and talk. But yeah, there's been a few people that are just like, nope, you're not playing. And it's sad, and we didn't compromise. Like sometimes like a promoter could be like, oh, well, we're having this pre-party or whatever, and then we're just like, nah, like we don't really want to create any problems, but like, like let your yes be yes, your no be no. Like we were supposed to play this, you know what I mean? So like, for sure. And the same thing, like, you had people can say like all punk rock and like money, but if someone says like the same thing, like a guarantee, like they do have to understand like as men and stuff, it's like we make this commitment to like be with families, all this, because we love that, but like we have to make sure that we can like be covered for those family things. Like if I'm leaving home, I need to make sure like my kid's gonna be all right, all those different things, like you have to make those priorities. When you're 20, it doesn't matter, you can sleep on a couch or whatever, but
yeah, it would probably be better if I think when you do those 20-minute sermons in the middle of the set.
Yeah,
I think that I'm just kidding. He does not do 20-minute sermons. All right, now the final question we ask everyone, and we put them on the spot with this one. If you had to name 3 bands in the scene right now, maybe up and coming that no one's heard of, or they've been around but just haven't gotten that publicity they should, we'll tag them below in this video. What are 3 bands? They don't have to be from Pittsburgh. They can be from anywhere that people should definitely check out that they might not have heard of.
I mean, as far as Pittsburgh bands, and I know they have huge traction or whatever, but I mean, Lady Beast blows my mind. Like, Lady Beast has been around, I think, 13 years, but I mean, I feel like last year I was like, how do I not know Lady Beast, and why are they not on tour with Iron Maiden all the time? Vicious Blade, too. I'm just like, I love these bands. To me, it's like, it's real what they're doing. And it just blows my mind away. And a third band, Dogface Bastards. They're from the West Coast. Good dudes. They just put an album out, Charged Records. Had a really good time with them. And I know that they're going to be playing like LA Punk Invasion. But yeah, hopefully those 3 bands, check them out.
All right, sounds good. We'll tag them all below. We'll tag everything Justin's part of down below. Check it all out. Thank you so much. Thanks for sitting with us. It was awesome.